Hello and welcome to another tutorial on how to make mods for the game Space Engineers. In this tutorial, I'm going to focus on how to add functionality into your mod. For a number of functions, it relies on how you've set your model up, primarily the use of dummy, or as they're also known as empties, helpers, detectors. They can be for managing highlights or links between model parts, or for some very basic functionalities within the game. Here, I've got some examples for how certain models are set up to function in a particular way in game using dummies. So if we start with this freight container here, all we have are some inventory detector dummies. All these do are provide a highlight on an object, and as it says here on the tooltip, defines an inventory access point without conveyor functionality, which is how we observe them in game. Next, I've got here a standard large grid small cargo container. And here you'll see it has detector entities on 6 sides. These are the conveyor ports. These provide a highlight for the mesh object contained within the definition here, as well as the connection between this block and the conveyor system. And that is done by ensuring that we have half of the dummy contained within the block and half that will be contained within the block that connects to it. But also on this block, we've got a detector for the terminal panel. And here in much the same way, it has a highlight attribute for the mesh that is used to highlight in game. And this just determines, as it says here, an terminal access point. So by selecting this in game, as you're probably familiar, you get access to the grid mesh. And in my final example here, we have a door. Now this door is made up of subparts. Now these subparts are connected using dummies. If I unconnect the subpart illustration, see those doors are not actually there. We have 2 subpart dummies which are facilitating the connection to another model. In this case, the scene is just called right for the right-hand door piece. And when exported together in the correct way, they function together as one model in-game. And this is obviously very useful for anything that has animated parts. We have a highlight detector for opening the door. And in this case, you'll notice that because of the door type, this is also a terminal type detector. It highlights the 2 subparts, but that means that this particular dummy doesn't function exactly the same way as it does on the cargo container. Now, for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to be referencing my example cargo box, as it provides a quick and easy jump into the functionality that we have, similar to this freight box. Here we are, we've got the model. As in the previous tutorial, there's nothing different about the visual model. But here we have, in our main entity, we have one detector here, which is an inventory detector, and that's going to highlight this base model shape, which is just this shaded cube with a few indents in. To make it look a bit more appealing, I've added some additional material elements. These are decals, so the way that these are specifically mapped planes, which the game applies the materials to the surface behind, which is a lot of how those fine details are done in the models without actually increasing complexity of the main mesh. But let's have a look at how we set up the configuration files for this. So here we have definition for the block. Now it's just a cube block. So what this means is it's not a functional block. We essentially the same as that planter in the previous mod, where it's just going to be something decorative. Here we've got our cargo box description, icon. In this case, I've gone for a small grid cube size. So it's a 1x1 small grid cube, giving it a few basic components, and then a unique block pair name to make sure that it's separate from any other mod or any other model. But what's different this time is I've set these 2 files up, an entity component and an entity container. What an entity component does is it allows you to add some additional functions to your item that it might not otherwise have because of its block type. Most commonly, these are inventories. So much like the freight box in the vanilla game, I've added an inventory to my cargo box. Here I've set a size of 1 by 1 by 1, and this relates to its overall volume, just to try and give some perspective on the different volume sizes. This component isn't any good without the container, which is the linking part, which is linked my inventory subtype cargo box to my cube block subtype cargo box. So this could be cargo box 1, as long as this is cargo box 1, they will connect. There are some block types in game that have multiple configuration files. Turrets is a very good example of a complex setup where you have multiple configurations all leading towards one block type. In the case of a turret, you've got ammo, you've got the weapon definition, as well as some other components such as particle effects or material specifications. Here we are back in our empty world. I can look up the cargo box. As this is a small grid, it won't snap to this scale, but I can plonk it down as a free object. And here you see the highlight in effect. And if I click on it, we've got our 1,000 liters. So that's what that volume 1 by 1 by 1 gets us. And I can freely move things in and out. Something extra we can do with our inventory is we can add an input constraint. So if we see here from the game files, we've got the locker room corner, and here we have a whitelist. This whitelist is displayed with an icon of an ammo clip, and here it is constraining us, being only putting in these objects. Any physical gun object, any oxygen container or gas container, so that's O2 and H2 bottles, any ammo magazine, and the specific type and subtype ID of a data patch. So if I was to copy this input constraint into my entity container, save, and then reload the game, we have a look, we've got that constraint. And I can put freely all the same tools and gas objects that I had before. Let's say I had some components. Let's grab the computer. It will not let me place that within the file. If I increase the volume, it's 2 by 2 by 2. That's 2 times 2 times 2. That should give us 8,000 liters. You'll see that this still says 1,000 liters. That's because inventories are contained within an object currently placed within the world. If I place a new object, and we have a look at that, that now has the new inventory size. The thing to remember when adjusting inventory sizes is that you have to replace any model in order to get them to work.